It's not the 10 best players in New York, but it's who will have the biggest impact for better or worse. So that's how Starling Marte finds himself at our list at number 10. Danny, of the four of us, you were the only one to have Marte on your list. You had him at number 6. Tell us why.
Yeah, I think when I look at this list and the body of work, I'm thinking about a guy who, when he's not in this game, when he's not a part of this team, you feel his absence. You can feel that lineup doesn't have as much spark. The team, I feel like the chemistry is different. The excitement is different around this guy. 2 years ago, he stole 47 bases. That was before the bases got bigger, right? He hit 310. He had a 132 weighted runs created plus. That's 32 better than the league. You see him there in his defense and his glove. Like, when this guy is in the lineup, he makes them better, significantly better. And so when he's not there, so I put him on the list because I think without him, they don't generate runs. They don't do as well. He has to be in that lineup.
And why was he not on your list?
I just feel like there are more players on the Mets that will have more potential impact there. I'm looking at some leaps forward, especially from the catcher, Francisco Alvarez, who I'm expecting big things from. Look, Kodai Senga's injury sort of puts him firmly in the mix on that list in a high spot as well, because he's their best pitcher, and it's not even close, and he's already hurt, and we're going to have to sort of go through the motions here as he goes through rehab and gets better, and hopefully gets back on the mound as soon as possible so we can see him pitch. So I feel like there's all these guys there who will impact the Mets more than a 35-year-old outfielder whose speed game is probably, you know, not going to leap forward this year. Although I will say I was down there last week, Sal, and I was talking to some of the players about stealing bases because the Mets were really efficient at it.
In person or on social media?
No, both, actually, but as you know.
Yeah.
But Francisco Lindor said, I don't see any reason why this guy, Marte, can't get back to what he used to do, stealing, or he said 50 bags. Marte's never stolen 50 in his career, but he's gotten 47 twice, and he's a very good base stealer. So if he is healthy with the new rules, he can really impact. And then Danny is right, and I'm wrong.
Well, the reason, to answer Francisco Lindor's question, why can't he do that again? It's because age comes for all of us, and we only get worse as we get further away from our 20s, unfortunately.
Maybe the truest thing ever said on this dark turn.
That is the answer, Francisco Lindor, to be clear. A little, like, I don't know if this is more... I took this into, like, I tried to over-conceptualize this a little bit too much, but I felt like on the whole, this list should be skewed towards Yankees because I think the range of outcomes for the Mets season is just sort of more limited than the Yankees. To me, the 10 most impactful players in New York, well, I'm talking, are you determining whether or not I see this team play in October? And it's really hard for me to think that Starling Marte on a Mets team that's likely to finish around 500 is really the difference between whether or not, like, they make the postseason or not. Fangraphs Zips projections had him projected at a lower WAR this year than Omar Narvaez, and that seems a little rude
harsh
to Marte, frankly. But I think it does sort of contextualize the fact that, like, to your point, like, there's a lot of guys like Alvarez and Pete Alonso and even like Brett Beatty, who you're like, maybe they'll have the best season of their career, and that could really propel something. And I think unless we're talking about, like, Marte potentially having the best season of his career, then he falls more into that role player. And yes, if every one of them, if he has a great year and Omar Narvaez has a great year, maybe on the whole they end up in the postseason, but it won't be because of him.
I like the way that you approached it with your list, and I think that's what makes it intriguing, is that everybody goes at it with a different mentality. Like, for me, I did it based on who I think is going to have positive production, not necessarily the negative impact. That's why Marte wasn't on my list. I hope he's doing well. I don't think he's going to have a big impact as far as positivity goes on the Mets season. All right, Hannah, you had Rodon ranked the highest of us at number 4. Why is that?
It is high. I had him at 4. that was after the Cole injury, probably. No, because in 2022, he was the second best pitcher by WAR. He was the best pitcher by expected ERA. That's why they gave him this deal. We have to believe that the performance last year was injury affected because he's just not a terrible pitcher by any means. And if they're going to, if they're going to have him start regularly, it's because they think he is an ace of the Gerrit Cole caliber, and if Gerrit Cole is going to be hurt and the Yankees are going to be good, it's going to be because of Carlos Rodon. That's sort of the logic that I took, which is like, again, like, let's assume things break right. What does this season look like? And it looks like the Yankees making the postseason and Carlos Rodon getting game 1, game 2 starts, depending on what else is going on with the rest of the rotation.
Which could be a scary thought there. Carlos Rodon being their ace if Gerrit Cole can't come back and be healthy here.
Well, to me, Sal, I'm expecting him to actually be pretty good this year because I do believe in the talent and the stuff. You know, a lot of the projection systems have him for like a high 3s ERA. I think he can actually shave it down to more like 3.5 runs, which would be a pretty good spot for him to be in. I don't think he's going to be a 200-inning workhorse because I think that age is going away for almost every pitcher in baseball. We only had 5 of those last year at all. But I do think he can deliver 165 innings of good pitching and to where he sort of earns himself a spot in a postseason rotation, maybe even at number 2, like Hannah said. I mean, look, I watched some of his spring training starts. You know, mid-90s fastball was there the last time. It wasn't exactly the Phillies A lineup that he just crushed in his last start, but the slider looked sharp. He got strikeouts. He limits walks. Look, this stuff is there. He's kind of a bad actor sometimes, though, and he's had some problems like with the mound presence and his reaction to the way he is perceived in baseball with the blowing kisses and all that stuff. He needs to clean that stuff up, but I think the talent is still there.
Who should we leave the blowing kisses to? What do you think? Anyone else on that team?
I mean, leave that to the Hollywood stars.
Oh,
you know, that's their thing, you know, get everybody to love them. But the baseball players, I prefer the stern, you know, or celebratory type thing, not the revenge kind of, you know, to the fans. Like that's how it's worked for me.
And, okay, so I thought the expectations were really high already coming into this season. And then you don't start the season with your ace, Gerrit Cole. I think there's never been more on his shoulders right now. They have to have him step up. The reason he got the contract and what Hannah was talking about, too, is 21 and 22. Those 2 seasons, a ton of consistency, one of the best pitchers in the league. His strikeout percentage was 2nd in the league behind Corbin Burns. Like, he is good. He's been proven, right? When you can do that back-to-back, that's why he got the big money. So this season, their rotation, their success, their wins, the offensive production, right? There's got to be less stress on those guys because the starters have to post. And Carlos Rodon has to go out and make 30-plus starts and do a really good job this year.
He's been often injured in his career. He had 2 good years in his entire career. He got paid off of that. Was awful in New York in year 1, not just on the field, blowing the kisses and other stuff. I have no hope. Although his last 2 spring starts were encouraging, I have no faith in Carlos Rodon.
You left Senga off your list because of injury concerns, but the panel had him at 8. Do you think that he could be more impactful than being
we only pointed out who we didn't put on our list.
I didn't put Senga on my list.
I did have Alvarez on my list. I just want to say that. But Senga, I worry about pitchers' injuries. He's got a shoulder capsule injury. They say he's doing well. He hasn't really started throwing yet, or I guess he's tossing or whatever. But I'm just not putting a guy on the list who's got a shoulder injury. I'm not buying it yet. So that's my rationale. And I did have Alvarez pretty high on my list, though. So I guess that's
what evens it out.
Let it go.
You did not have Francisco Alvarez on your list. Why not?
Okay. Here's number 11. You guys probably can't see this. I pulled up my list that I made. You can't see it because it's a screen. Please confirm for them that I had Alvarez as number 11, which I took my list to 11 just that way when I sent it to people to check that if they thought, like, why didn't you put Francisco Alvarez on the list? I could be like, I did. He just missed the cut. So he just missed the cut. And I'm kind of feeling like maybe I should have had him higher.
Don't give him peer pressure.
No, I'm succumbing to spring because he's been so good in spring. So, okay, I'm going to talk about that instead. I'm going to talk about how good he's been in spring. A little positivity. Because I didn't have any of the people we had talked about yesterday on my list either.
This isn't like a Hall of Fame vote. We won't score sheet.
We talked so much about how he had a surprisingly good defensive season last year. He was really good. He was like 4th, I think, in catcher framing, which was unexpected because coming into the league, there was this expectation that, like, well, he needs to work on his defense. However, last year he was not great at controlling the running game. He was 54th of 63 catchers and caught stealing last year. And as anyone who's watched the Mets this spring knows, he's been really good at throwing out runners this spring. He's got 8 of 15 so far this spring. I think that's the most of any catcher. So perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps I said this yesterday, but in general, I was like, there should be fewer Mets on this list because their ceiling is just lower than the Yankees, and there's only so much impact you can have if you're on a team that's going to probably finish around 500. But I do think that if Francisco Alvarez takes this really definite step forward in controlling the running game, that's something that has long-term impact on the Mets. Because having a really, really good defensive catcher who can control the running game is a great thing long-term for the team. So you know what?
Yeah,
he should have been on the list.
I had Alvarez at number 11 as well, believe it or not. So I'm with you. I think what I'm looking for this year is just steady consistency from him. We know he's got the big bat. We know he can hit. He's got the defensive tools, but you need to see him come up in big situations and either make the great defensive play, as you alluded to, or they've got a lot of pop. So the homers are nice, but I'd like to see just some more consistency from behind the plate. And it's not a knock on Alvarez not making my top 10. I just had 10 other people who I do feel will be more impactful. But the framing will improve. I think he needs to help a weaker pitching staff this year and really make his mark. So he's close to cracking the top 10 for sure, but he didn't make my top 10 either.
Why is Gerrit Cole your number 1?
I moved him up to the top spot once he got injured because I think that he is unique or one of the more unique players in baseball. He's one of 5 pitchers to amass 200 innings last year, and he's the only one of that group to have an ERA under 3. The Yankees were 23-10 when he started, and they were a below-average offensive team last year. So, look, Gerrit Cole's impact on the Yankees, to me, is nearly immeasurable. I can't imagine leaving him off a list, for instance. But
trying to say,
and you sort of we'll get to that in a moment, Hart. But you sort of flash forward here, and you think about the Yankee rotation in a playoff series without Gerrit Cole. That means that they're an easy out to me, John. But if you put him on top of that rotation, then they're a much tougher team, and they're actually possibly what their fans are dreaming about this year, which is an actual contender.
You done?
Now I'm done. I can't.
Notice the beef
Let's see how you rebut that.
Well, first of all, you're taking the negative impact as well as the positive
impact, baby.
I know. I kind of just dealt with the positive impact, and I may have overreacted to his injury. We'll see. But he's hurt, and I'm not sure he's going to be okay. I know it's easy to say he avoided the surgery, everything's okay. But I wrote this column after the injury. He's never really been hurt. He's been very durable, but he's also been he's a definition of a power pitcher. So is he going to be the same guy if he's a little worried about the arm? It's a long season, but that's my defense for leaving him off, and I'll leave it up to the jury to decide.
Harper didn't have him on the top 10
I didn't like that tone, Nikki.
Sorry, I've just got to tell the people
like that
if
tone,
they didn't
Nikki.
hear it. I just wanted to make sure. Well, to me, Cole is the most important piece of the Yankees this season. They're starting without him. Hannah, how do they overcome that?
Are they willing to throw a whole lot of money at Jordan Montgomery? Because that might help. I mean,
that could help.
That would help. That would help. It's, first of all, I don't know how you leave him off your list entirely because overcoming it requires something. And so he's clearly having some impact even in his absence, don't you think?
He is, but I didn't take it that way.
I think this is a really tough. I don't know how they overcome it. I mean, truly, they were not willing to go out and sign another pitcher. I mean, Snell has since come off the board. Lorenzen has come off the board. Montgomery is still out there. I don't know that he would be open with a reunion anyway. They don't seem like they want to pay the $110 tax that it would take to bring someone else in. So I guess the only way to overcome it is to hope that Carlos Rodon is the guy they think he's going to be, that Marcus Stroman, Clark Schmidt, those guys are all durable and viable and successful because the bullpen is not where they're going to get bailed out. And that's what I thought was really troubling, is that this is one of the worst bullpens the Yankees have gone into a season with. Fangraphs had them 19th. That is not playoff caliber. And so the pitching is going to have to come from the starting rotation. So maybe how they overcome it is just Soto, Judge, and Stanton all homer every game.
Yeah, and we don't even know if when Cole comes back, is he going to be at what he was if he's maybe a little bit injured.
Thank you, Nikki.
Sorry, I'm trying to be positive here, but my bad. Well, it feels like the return of Edwin Diaz has been a long time coming. And in the spring, he looked like his old lights-out self. Hannah, what are your expectations for him this season?
I think one of the things that's really encouraging, and we saw this at the end of last season, both he and the Mets, I think, talked about how, if there was a playoff push, he probably could have come back at some point last year. So it doesn't feel like we're in an injury risk situation so much anymore. It feels like he's fully healthy. He's looked good in spring. What I mostly, my expectations are that it'll be a more satisfying watch for Mets fans this year. I think blowing games late is a really painful way to watch your season go down the drain last year. So I just think, we talked about this so much on the show last year, the trickle-down effect of not having Diaz and the way that it made all of the decisions more difficult for the front office, for the manager, for fans watching, just because who do you put in when you're leading versus when the bullpen is worn out. So I just think it makes for a more streamlined and pleasant watch. That's my expectation.
Yeah, you talked about the front office and how it helps them. How does it impact the entire team, Anthony?
Well, I think, Nikki, there's a huge psychological boost that the Mets are going to get out of this because of the security blanket at the end of the game. And I mean, look, throughout baseball history, the way that teams win games when they lead in the ninth inning, it hasn't really changed that drastically in the age of the closer. And that's fine and everything. But I think that the Mets will be much more confident with an incredible closer like Diaz at the back end. And I think that this even goes further than that, guys, because I think it affects the rest of baseball as well. I was on the phone with a GM from another team the other day, and we were talking about potential, wild card races in the NL, blah, blah, blah. And he said that he thought that the return of Edwin Diaz changed the perception of the Mets around the league. And to me, that is very interesting because now you know that you have a little bit more of an 8-inning game than 9-inning because of Diaz, because he's been so electric.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's crucial for a team mentally. As you said, there's nothing worse than those crushing late-inning losses. And my only concern is, are they going to get him enough leads in the ninth inning? Because that's where the questions are about this team, the starting pitching, the rest of the bullpen, and the offense, which has gotten a boost with J.D. Martinez. But I think he's going to be, listen, if you watch him this spring, that slider is as nasty as ever. So I think he's going to be great. I just don't know if he's going to get as many opportunities, certainly as he did in 2022.
Jerry, you have Lindor as the most impactful Mets player, period. Do you think that we undervalue his contributions to the team?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that 30-30-30, because he had 30 doubles as well, is so important. But on the defensive side, I think he was robbed of a gold glove in 22. I think he played plus defense in 23. He did have a couple of stints where he had silly errors. But outside of that, the number one most important thing for me is this dude posts up. You can pencil him in for 160 plus at shortstop. And with J.D. Martinez, he'll be batting second. So you're going to get one of the best players consistently in your lineup and playing the most important defensive position every single day.
Yeah, I think on my list I had Lindor either first for the Mets or on par with Edwin Diaz. And I do think he's going to have another one of those seasons where he does hit 30 home runs. I'm thinking 100 RBIs. Zips has him projected for 5 WAR. So, I mean, this guy makes or breaks the Mets season. Like Jerry said, I mean, he plays. There were times last year, his wife had a baby. He was in the lineup right after that. He was always ready, even when he was hurt. And I think that's one of the things that we saw with Francisco Lindor, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, him emerging as a clubhouse leader. He's that guy when they have a tough loss, he's in front of the line, in front of the locker. When they have a good win, he's in front of the locker. It doesn't matter what it is. He's there to talk about his teammates. He's there to talk about his team. And not only do teammates appreciate that, but I think the fans appreciate it too.
Yeah, I love Francisco Lindor. I do think he's undervalued, underrated, underappreciated. I think he's going to be an all-star this year. He's kind of gotten snubbed for the last couple of seasons for the Mets. He posts, to Jerry's point. I don't know what more you want the guy to do other than put up gaudy numbers every which way he possibly can. He got off to a rough start here. We have seen that happen before. Carlos Beltran comes to mind, and Beltran to me was always underrated by the Met fan as well. I hope that that's not the case with Lindor. We know he's going to be here long enough. Maybe the fans start to appreciate him a little bit more. Danny, what are your expectations for Lindor going into the season?
By the way, I think Jerry's mustache is undervalued, just to let everybody know. He's like, the mustache is looking good, my guy. So here's the thing. When you talk about expectations for somebody and what he's been able to do, that's right, Jerry. 30-30, there's no doubt I think Lindor can do that again. I feel like he's just been keeping pace with what he's done. And I think he had the first season here wasn't great, right? And so then you start to wonder, well, we gave you all that money and you're not living up to that. No, that's not the case. Let's look at it in the big context, the past 3 seasons. Okay, he is the second best offensive shortstop in the league. Second best, okay? When it comes to his defense, he's the 3rd best in the entire league. And I think that sometimes fans forget that because I don't know what you want him to do. Maybe hit gold home run balls and other things that I can't think of, but do better than what he's done. But really, in the context of the entire league, of all of Major League Baseball, this is one of the best shortstops the past couple of years in his big body of work. And when you look at him in spring training, right, he's working with the younger guys. As Laura said, he's accountable for what he's done all the time. This is a guy who loves the game and wants to win, and he's a winner, and he's been a proven winner. And so I think the expectations are really high for him. I think that this could be a really big season for me. I think it's his age 30 season, so it's right at that peak time, right, when you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. You know
it. Look, he's done a nice job after the slow first year, or the bad first year in New York. Jerry, I hate to. When I watch Lindor, I feel his frustration sometimes at maybe not being appreciated the way he feels like he should be. It's what got off to a rocky start. He couldn't believe that the fans treated him the way that he did. The first year, obviously, he had a bad year that year, but ever since, he's been building it back up. Do you think that there's anything Lindor can do other than winning and having the ultimate team success, which we don't know if that's going to happen? Is there anything he could do to get that appreciation that we feel like he deserves?
I think that first year, Sal, that you mentioned, I think he tried to be something different than who he is. I think he tried to lead with more of a vocal approach, and I think he kind of tried to push himself because they did need that J.D. Martinez style. I think he wanted to hit 40 homers to help this team. I think his body of work will speak for itself. I think him posting up is really, really important. And if he goes out there and he's consistent once again, I think the Mets fans will start to appreciate him and forget about that first season in a Mets uniform and understand that he's been so consistent and he's there every day for these New York Mets.
Yeah, I think it's much more than the fans or even the media. He should have been an all-star. 2 years he got snubbed by the game. He's as good, if not better, than any other shortstop in baseball, and yet he's getting overlooked for some reason. Hopefully this is the year where he gets the due respect. At number 3 on our split squad countdown, the final Met is in his final year. Pete Alonso also had back-to-back seasons of 40 home runs, and no one in baseball has hit more long balls since 2019 than Alonso. Of course, Pete Alonso is entering his final season under team control, and who knows if we're watching Pete's final season as a Met. How dare I say those words? Jerry, how do you think Alonso will handle all the pressure that his walk year is going to bring?
Yeah, I feel the same way about him in a Mets uniform. It'd be crazy to think about him wearing anything else, but it's a big possibility. As far as his performance this year, I believe in Pete Alonso. I think last year really helped him. There was a point in that season where he was super struggling, and I think he was humbled by his approach. And this guy has proven that he's a learner. He's a student of the game. I think he's learned and become better as an overall hitter. And if you're making contact at a better rate, which I think was his biggest approach to the offseason, lowering those strikeout totals, I think just the contact he makes for being such a big, strong guy is going to drive the runs in. So I also believed in Michael Conforto going into his platform year, and I was proven wrong there. But I truly think that Pete Alonso will be fine, especially surrounded by the talent that's going to be around there in that lineup.
All right, Danny, you had Pete at number 2 on your list. Why is he the most impactful Met to you?
Yeah, well, to Jerry's point, adding J.D. Martinez will make Pete Alonso better. I think that's really important. But money talks, right? Money is motivating, and he is in a contract year, and he hired Scott Boras. This guy means business. So what does he have to do this year? He needs to perform well. He needs to have a big season if he wants to get that monster contract he thinks that he deserves. But that also benefits the New York Mets, right? When Pete does well, the Mets do well. And I think that his power is so important. That team lacks it. And so for him to do well, for him to make contact, for him to just be solid over at first base, right? They don't need a gold glove over there. They need a guy to catch the ball and do his job. So I think that he is one of those important pieces to this team because this year means the most to Pete Alonso.
Yeah, I'm a giant nerd, so I was actually looking at a SABR research paper on how hitters act during their walk year, and they actually end up doing marginally better, while pitchers tend to do a lot worse when it's a contract year. I see Pete doing that, but not just because of what a research paper says. You look at the guys who have had great walk years. You're thinking Barry Bonds and Pirates 1992, A-Rod both times, Aaron Judge, and all these guys had a specific sort of makeup. They were clutch players. They were leaders. They were the type of people who did really well in the spotlight, and I do feel like Pete is that type of player. So I do think he's going to step up to the plate. Literally, metaphorically, however you want to say it. I think he's going to hit his home runs and maybe, chase a little bit less because that contact was something that he was working on. And, yeah, I think it's going to be good.
I get that sense, too. Jerry, how much do you think Aaron Judge, Pete has been compared to Judge, not the players overall, but as far as the home runs go, and as we just said, nobody has more home runs than Pete since he's been in the league in 2019. We know his prowess as a home run hitter. But how much do you think him seeing Judge do what he did, break a record in his walk year, motivates Pete going into his walk year?
I do think it plays a factor. The fact that he's so competitive and he thinks he's the best power hitter in the game, and rightfully so. I think numbers overall have proven that since 2019. And I think Juan Soto being there in his walk year as well is also a motivating factor, because Pete believes he's the best player, best offensive player on the planet, and he wants to go out there and prove that. So Judge and Juan Soto getting the most press in the same city that he's in is also a motivating factor.
All right, and the Judge is number 2, which means Juan Soto number 1. Soto, in his first year in New York, gets that top spot. Jim, what are the expectations from you for Juan Soto this year?
Well, I picked him to be the MVP in the American League. I think he's one of those guys. He has a ton of swagger. He, I believe, is built for New York. His approach, he never really changes his approach, and he's finally in a hitter's park. You know, Washington wasn't a great hitter's park. He had some protection around there with Harper was there. He went to San Diego, and he had some protection around here, but it's really difficult to hit there in San Diego. I think here in this ballpark for left-handed hitters, and then with the protection of Judge and kind of Judge taking a lot of the pressure off of him to some degree. He's going to have his own pressure, but I think Judge being there is a huge help for him. I think he's going to have a big year as long as he doesn't get out of his overall approach, which he hardly ever does.
Yeah, and we've seen him succeed on the biggest stage in the postseason, obviously in 2019 as a young kid. But, Todd, you've played in both the postseason and New York in the postseason. New York is a different animal. What type of challenges for a star player here, having all the pressures of New York, does Juan Soto face?
Look, I think that the biggest challenge he's such a great player, generational talent, all the things that we've heard about. He struggled when he first went to San Diego, and it took him a while to kind of get acclimated, new lineup, new place, new expectations. He's going to have those same new expectations on him here. And coming off a good spring, I think the only thing that he's going to have challenges with is getting off to a quick start, because you don't want to get off to a slow start in New York. Coming off a good spring, they have such high expectations. He's a key to their success this year. We've already talked about the loss of Gerrit Cole, and something that he's going to feel like, okay, I'm a part of this as the winning guy, the winning combination. And if he gets off to a little bit of a slow start, we saw it with Francisco Lindor. That slow start can snowball when you're in New York, because the press has expectations, the fan have expectations, and then you put those expectations on yourself, and that's the only thing that I think he could have a little bit of a difficulty navigating early on in this season. Other than that, I think the talent's going to take over.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I never, with a lot of guys, I think about it, oh man, New York first year. With him, I don't even think about it. However, a slow start can change everything, to your point. All right, Andy, how big is this for the Yankees to have both Soto and Judge in the same lineup?
It's potentially historic. It really is one of the more entertaining combos offensively that one could ever imagine. We've seen the heights of consistency and greatness that Judge has achieved. And to me, what Judge brings that's even more impactful than Soto, which we haven't raised in this particular discussion yet, is his defense. You have such an elite right fielder, an unbelievable arm, a guy who is nobody's ideal center fielder, but can play a very capable center field and will for a significant amount of time this year. Soto doesn't have those outfield tools. He's obviously a hitter of the ilk. He draws historical comps to people like Ted Williams, which is not bad. But Judge brings you that kind of offense and also truly elite defense, a real two-way player. So it's always fun to watch Judge play on both sides of the ball. Luis Rojas, the outfield coach for the Yankees, is working with Soto on being a little bit more confident, a little bit more swaggy, for lack of a better term, in his defense, hoping that brings out his natural athleticism a little bit more than it has in the past. So it's a really special combo at the plate, obviously, and then Judge brings that defensive impact, too, which is very real.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them in the lineup. The only thing is, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I feel just concerned about Judge's health, especially playing center field. He's already dealing with the toe that they said he's going to have to maintain the rest of his career. He's already dealing with mid-spring beat-up, whatever the heck that is. The season hasn't even started yet. They're going to expect him, after the mid-spring beat-up, at 32 years of age, to be in center field. I just wonder how many games they're actually going to be in that lineup together.